The laughter still echoed in her ears. Evelyn Pierce Coleman stood at the edge of her own driveway. 9 months pregnant, dress clinging to her trembling body, suitcase dropped in the dirt. Her husband, Marcus, stood under the porch light, smug smile cutting through the night. "Your billionaire daddy's gone, Evie," he sneered. "And so are you. This house, this company, this life, all of it is mine now." He laughed as the heavy door slammed in her face. Behind it, she heard another woman's voice, Naomi's, soft, mocking, victorious. Evelyn pressed a hand against her belly. Her father had been buried only hours ago. The world thought she had lost everything. But Marcus didn't know about the sealed envelope her father's lawyer handed her at the funeral. The one marked, "To my daughter, the new CEO." And in 3 days, at the will reading that would shake the entire Pierce empire, he'd learn what real loss meant. Because the woman he kicked out was already the boss who'd destroy them all. The porch light flickered as if it couldn't bear to witness what was happening. Evelyn Pierce Coleman stood on the marble steps of the mansion she once called home, clutching her suitcase with trembling fingers. Her body ached under the weight of 9 months of pregnancy, her back pressed to the cold wind. But the ache in her chest was worse, the sound of her husband's laughter tearing through her like glass. Marcus leaned against the doorframe, a glass of bourbon in hand, his tie loosened, his arrogance reeking louder than the whiskey. "You still don't get it, do you, Evelyn?" he said, his tone dripping with venomous amusement. "The old man's dead. The money's gone. You're just a broke, hormonal woman who married up, and your time's up." He tossed her wedding ring into the gravel. It rolled toward her feet, catching the porch light like a dying spark before stopping dead in the dirt. Evelyn's lips parted, but no words came, only the faint gasp of someone too shocked to breathe. Behind Marcus, the shadow of another woman stepped into view. Naomi, red lips, sharp eyes, wearing Evelyn's silk robe. "Marcus, darling," Naomi cooed softly, pretending to be shy. "It's getting late. Let her go. She doesn't belong here anymore." The sound cut deeper than the cold. Evelyn blinked through tears, looking past them into the foyer. The chandelier her father had gifted her on her wedding day. The staircase where she once imagined raising her child, now all poisoned by betrayal. "Marcus," she whispered. "Please, I'm about to give birth. Just let me stay until morning." He laughed again, that same cruel laugh that would soon be his undoing. "You think I'm your caretaker now? Take your sympathy act somewhere else. You're not the heiress anymore, Evelyn. You're nothing." He motioned to the security guard at the end of the hallway. "Get her out of here." Her voice cracked. "My father." "Your father's gone," Marcus snapped, his mask of politeness slipping. "And with him, your protection. Whatever little will he left, I'll handle it. You're finished here." The door began to close. Evelyn stepped forward, desperation twisting through every muscle. "You'll regret this," she whispered. Marcus smirked. "I doubt it." The heavy door slammed shut. Silence, then the faint click of the lock. Final, cruel. Evelyn stood still for a moment, chest heaving, the baby in her womb shifting as if sensing her pain. The wind howled down the driveway. Her father's voice echoed faintly in her memory. "When they turn on you, open the letter." She reached into her coat pocket and felt the sealed envelope. The one Henry Wallace had handed her at the funeral. Her father's initials were pressed in gold wax. Tears blurred her sight as she whispered, "Not yet, Daddy, but soon." Headlights flared from behind. A passing car slowing as the driver recognized her face. Evelyn straightened, wiped her tears, and forced a breath. The world had just thrown her out, but she wasn't planning to stay on the ground. She turns toward the road, unaware she's walking straight toward the storm that will make her the new CEO. The night air was still when Evelyn reached the quiet motel room she'd rented after being thrown out. Her hands trembled as she placed the sealed envelope on the bedside table, the one her father had given her before his final surgery. She couldn't open it yet, not until she was ready. She sat on the bed, the cheap sheets crackling under her weight. Her reflection in the cracked mirror stared back. A woman 9 months pregnant, stripped of everything but memory. And that's when the memories began to rise. 6 years earlier. "Numbers don't lie, but people do," Her father's deep voice echoed across the study. Richard Pierce sat behind a mahogany desk, his silver hair illuminated by the morning light pouring through the tall windows. He was a man whose reputation could silence boardrooms. Yet with Evelyn, his tone was soft, patient, protective. "Dad," Evelyn had said, flipping through the financial reports, "I'm not supposed to be seeing this. Uncle Gerald will have a fit if he finds out." Richard smiled faintly. "Gerald's a politician, not a leader. He talks about legacy, but he doesn't understand responsibility. You do." He rose, walking to the window overlooking the family estate. "When I built Pierce Industries, I wanted to leave something greater than money. I wanted to leave integrity. That's what you have, Evelyn, even if no one else sees it yet." She watched him, eyes filled with a mixture of love and disbelief. "You think I could ever run this empire?" He turned, his gaze steady and sure. "One day you'll have to." She laughed then, softly, nervously. "Dad, you know the board would never." "They will when they see what you're capable of." He placed a confidential file on the table. Company acquisitions, global trade proposals, projects never revealed publicly. "For the next 3 years, you'll train with me, quietly. No one must know, not Marcus, not even the board." Evelyn frowned. "Why the secrecy?" Richard exhaled slowly. "Because people show their true colors when they think you're powerless." The line struck her so deeply that it would replay years later on that cold night outside her own mansion. Her father had taught her every hidden truth, from stock manipulation to internal audits. Skills he never shared with his brothers. He made her sign every mock contract, explain every merger, and predict market collapses before they happened. And every time she got it right, he'd grin and tap the ring on his finger, the same ring now hidden in her coat pocket. "When you wear this," he said, "it won't just mean you're my daughter. It'll mean you're ready to protect everything we built." Back to present. Evelyn blinked, a tear sliding down her cheek. She whispered to the dark, "You trained me for this, didn't you?" Her phone buzzed, an unknown number, a familiar voice on the line. "Mrs. Coleman," said Henry Wallace, her father's lawyer, "I'm sorry for your loss, but there's something you need to know. You were named the new CEO of Pierce Industries. Official announcement. At the will reading." Evelyn froze. Her father's words echoed again. "When they think you're powerless?" She straightened slowly, eyes burning with new purpose. "That's when you strike," Henry adds quietly. "You're not safe until that will is read." Morning sunlight spilled through the blinds of the small motel room, but it did nothing to warm Evelyn. Her world still smelled of ash, her father gone, her home stolen, and the man she'd loved now laughing beside another woman. Her phone buzzed again, Charlotte's name. "Evie, are you okay?" Evelyn hesitated, then whispered, "He threw me out. Naomi was there." A pause, then Charlotte's voice hardened. "Naomi Blake? Marcus's consultant?" Evelyn's silence said everything. Charlotte exhaled. "Listen, I told you something was off months ago. She's been circling your husband like a hawk over a dying rabbit. But Evie," her tone softened, "you need to stay calm until the will reading. Don't let them know you're still in the game." Evelyn's lips trembled. "He thinks I'm powerless." "Then let him." Evelyn ended the call, clutching the phone to her chest. She turned toward the bedside table, the envelope, the ring, and now, a new piece of strength rising in her chest. Naomi Blake leaned against the grand piano, her robe replaced by a sleek emerald suit. She flipped through a stack of papers. Pierce Industries stock options. Her fingers trailed across the embossed logo with a smirk of ownership. Marcus entered, buttoning his cufflinks, all charm and self-satisfaction. "Did you see the look on her face last night?" he said with a laugh. "Like a lost puppy that finally realized it's been living in someone else's house." Naomi grinned, handing him a coffee. "Cruel maybe, but necessary. You're CEO material now, Marcus. Once the board votes next week, everything your father-in-law built will be yours." He nodded, though a flicker of doubt crossed his face. "You're sure about that?" She tilted her head. "Of course. Henry Wallace will read the will, but with Evelyn out, the board has no choice but to put you in charge." Marcus sipped the coffee, eyes narrowing. Still, the old man was a control freak. I wouldn't be shocked if he had one last trick. Naomi walked up to him, pressing a manicured hand to his chest. And that's why you have me. We're not just taking her fortune, Marcus. We're rewriting her story. She lifted a delicate gold necklace, Evelyn's necklace, from her pocket and fastened it around her neck. You'd be surprised what people leave behind when they're thrown out. She sat in a car parked across the street, her eyes locked on the window where Naomi stood. Her breath hitched as she saw her own necklace glint against the sunlight. For a moment, her grief burned into anger, the kind of anger that doesn't destroy, it builds. She whispered to herself, "You stole my home, my name, and now my place. But you'll never steal what he left for me." Her fingers brushed the envelope again. The seal was unbroken, but her resolve no longer was. In 3 days, the world would know who truly ran Pierce Industries. Naomi receives a call. The will reading is scheduled for Friday. Make sure Evelyn doesn't show up. Hello, family. Welcome back. Before we begin, please click subscribe. Every single click helps us tell stories of courage and truth. And in the comments, tell us where you're watching from. Because when we share these stories together, we remind each other that even in pain, we can rise. The motel room was silent except for the faint ticking of the wall clock and the rhythmic hum of the air conditioner. Evelyn sat at the small table, staring at the sealed envelope in front of her. It had sat untouched for 2 days, its golden wax still pristine, her father's initials glinting faintly under the dull light. She reached out and brushed a trembling finger over it. Her heart thudded as if the envelope itself were alive, whispering to her in her father's voice, "When they turn on you, open this." Her throat tightened. "They already have, Dad." She hesitated, remembering the last day she saw him alive, his frail hand gripping hers in the hospital, oxygen tubes framing his tired face. "Promise me something, Evelyn," Richard whispered, his voice thin but unwavering. She nodded through tears. "Anything. When the people closest to you begin to show their teeth, don't fight them with emotion. Fight them with proof." Evelyn frowned. "Proof?" Richard's lips curved faintly. "I've seen too much greed disguised as family. That's why I left you more than shares or money. I left you truth. And you'll find it when you open my last letter." Her chest constricted. "Why talk like this? You're not going anywhere." But he smiled sadly, eyes glassy but sharp. "Every empire falls when its builder dies, unless the next ruler knows the snakes by name." He coughed, squeezing her hand tighter. "The letter will guide you. When you open it, don't cry. Act." The memory faded. Evelyn blinked hard and sat up straighter. The grief she'd been carrying began to change shape, from sorrow to focus. She took a deep breath, picked up a letter opener, and slid it under the seal. The paper made a soft rip, and her life split with it. Inside was a single sheet, written in her father's unmistakable handwriting. "My dearest Evelyn, if you are reading this, it means I'm gone, and the wolves have begun to circle. You've been appointed CEO of Pierce Industries, quietly through a sealed directive I signed 6 months ago. Henry Wallace holds the document. The board will not know until the will is read. Trust no one from within the family, not even Marcus. He's been under investigation for insider fraud. My investigators traced his transfers to an account linked to Naomi Blake. Use what I've taught you. Lead with grace, but never with fear. And when you stand before them, remember, you are my legacy, not my victim. Your father, Richard Pierce." Her breath hitched. She pressed the letter to her chest, tears falling freely now, but not of weakness. The camera of her mind panned to the window, to the city skyline glowing in the distance. "Naomi, Marcus," she whispered, voice steady now. "You think you've won." She folded the letter carefully and slipped it into her purse beside the ring. "But this time," she said softly, "the Empire answers to me." Her phone vibrates. Henry's voice urgent. "Evelyn, they're moving money out of your father's accounts tonight. If we don't act fast, you could lose everything before the will reading." The night outside the motel thickened with thunder. Lightning cracked in the distance as Evelyn's phone pressed against her ear, Henry's voice frantic. "They're moving the funds, Evelyn. Hundreds of millions. Marcus has already transferred Pierce Industrial shares into a private shell account under Naomi Blake's name. Her pulse spiked. Can we stop it? I've frozen a fraction of it, Henry said, but they're using your father's digital authorization codes. You're still officially locked out until the will reading. Sit tight. Do nothing that can be traced. Evelyn's mind spun, her heart pounding with betrayal, fear, and fury. The baby kicked sharply in her womb as if echoing her unrest. She tried to breathe, but her chest felt tight. Henry, she whispered, clutching her stomach. Something's wrong. Evelyn? Evelyn, what's happening? Her vision blurred. The room tilted. The letter slipped from her hand, falling onto the floor as her knees buckled. Pain seized her body, a deep, twisting agony that made her cry out. The phone clattered to the ground. Evelyn! Henry's voice shouted faintly through the speaker. She gripped the edge of the bed, sweat pouring down her temple. A wave of terror rolled through her. Contractions, violent and unrelenting. 9 months pregnant, no family, no husband. The world was closing in. She stumbled toward the door, clutching her belly, dragging herself into the dim hallway of the motel. Please, she gasped to a night clerk who looked up in alarm. Hospital, call, hospital. Moments later, the screech of an ambulance pierced the night. Bright white lights, the cold smell of antiseptic. Evelyn drifted in and out of consciousness, hearing fragments. Nurses shouting, wheels rolling, someone saying, She's in labor, premature stress. Then, a soft, familiar voice. Evelyn, it's me. Her eyes fluttered open. Dr. Monroe, her obstetrician and her father's old friend, leaned over her, calm but stern. You're going to be okay. Focus on breathing. Evelyn tried to speak, but the pain came again, stealing her voice. Monroe gripped her hand. Your blood pressure's high, and you've been under severe stress. But you're strong. Your father always said you had his fire. Tears streamed down her cheeks. He trained me for everything, except this, she whispered. Monroe smiled softly. You'll be fine. You've got more strength than you think. Hours blurred. Then amid the chaos and the cries, a single sound cut through, a newborn's wail. Evelyn exhaled, trembling, relief flooding through her body. A boy, Monroe said gently, healthy and beautiful. Evelyn smiled faintly, her exhaustion mixing with awe. Richard, she murmured. His name is Richard. As dawn crept through the hospital window, Evelyn held her son against her chest, her father's letter resting on the side table. The nurse entered quietly and handed her a phone. Someone called for you. Said it was urgent. She pressed it to her ear. Henry's voice was tight. Evelyn, Marcus just announced he's taking full control of Pierce Industries. He's calling an emergency board meeting tomorrow. Her eyes hardened, her hand tightening around her baby. Then I guess tomorrow, she said softly, is when I start fighting back. Naomi's voice in background on Henry's line. Make sure she never makes it to the will reading. The next morning, while Evelyn watched her newborn sleep in the hospital crib, the sunlight streaming through the blinds felt like an illusion. Too bright for a world this cruel. She traced her fingers across her son's tiny hand and whispered, You'll never be a pawn like I was. Her eyes caught the TV mounted on the wall. Breaking news. Marcus Coleman to assume interim leadership of Pierce Industries, pending will reading. Her stomach turned. His smug face filled the screen. Standing behind a podium, Naomi at his side. We'll continue my late father-in-law's vision, Marcus said smoothly. My wife, Evelyn, is currently unavailable. Unbelievable. Even the word wife from his lips sounded like mockery. The anchor continued. Sources close to the family suggest a pending shift in company ownership, with Mr. Coleman expected to assume majority control. Evelyn muted the television and closed her eyes, but memory dragged her backward. 5 years earlier. It was the night of the Pierce Industries Winter Gala. Crystal chandeliers, champagne, laughter. Evelyn had been radiant, wearing the same necklace Naomi now flaunted. She remembered how Marcus approached her that night. Confident, attentive, perfectly rehearsed. You must be the only woman here who doesn't know she owns the room, he'd said, flashing that perfect grin. She'd laugh then, shyly. I don't own anything. My father does. That's what I like about you, he said, handing her a glass of champagne. You're humble, rare in your world. But what she didn't see was the sharp glance he'd exchanged across the hall. A nod toward Naomi, then just a friend in his circle. Evelyn found him in her father's office late one night, rifling through documents. Marcus, what are you doing? He spun, fake smiling. Nothing, darling. Just looking for your father's quarterly figures. She frowned. Those aren't public. He slid the folder back into place, kissed her forehead. You worry too much. That night, Richard had called her privately. Evelyn, he'd said, voice low. Marcus is ambitious. Too ambitious. Don't show him the company's passwords. Ever. She hadn't listened. She'd believed in love more than logic. Evelyn wiped away tears of regret, her pulse trembling between heartbreak and awakening. He was never my husband, she whispered. He was my father's enemy wearing a wedding ring. Her phone buzzed again. Charlotte's message. I found something. Naomi used to work for a corporate rival before she met Marcus. Your marriage wasn't coincidence, Evie. It was a setup. Evelyn's breath caught. Her father had seen it all coming. His warning echoed. People show their true colors when they think you're powerless. She lifted her son carefully, her tone steady now. More command than plea. They think I'm broken, Richard, but I'm just loading the weapon they built for me. Her phone rang again. Henry's voice, hushed but urgent. Evelyn, the will reading's confirmed for tomorrow at noon, but Marcus is trying to get it moved forward privately. You must be there, no matter what. Evelyn's eyes hardened, glinting like her father's. I'll be there, she said, and when I walk in, they'll remember whose blood built that company. Cut to Naomi whispering into Marcus's ear at his penthouse. If she shows up at that will reading, we're finished. The hospital room was quiet except for the soft rhythm of Evelyn's baby breathing beside her. For the first time in days, there was peace. Fragile, temporary peace. She stared at her newborn's face, tracing his tiny nose with a trembling finger. You're all I have left, she whispered, but you're also my reason to rise. Then a knock. Evelyn turned. Henry Wallace, her father's lawyer, stepped inside, hat in hand, suit immaculate, eyes heavy with something deeper than professionalism. Henry, she said, surprised. You came here? He gave a small nod. I had to. The situation's moving faster than I expected. He closed the door, his voice dropping to a whisper. Marcus has been calling the board, trying to get them to sign early power of attorney transfers. He's desperate to control Pierce Industries before the will is read. Evelyn frowned. Can he? Henry's gaze softened. Not legally, but manipulation works faster than paperwork. That's why I needed to see you face to face. He opened his briefcase and placed 2 envelopes on the table. One was thick, embossed with Pierce Industries' gold logo. The other was thin, handwritten. The thick one, he said quietly, is your father's official appointment letter. He named you as his successor 6 months before his death. It was sealed to prevent interference. The board doesn't know yet, and Marcus can't stop it once it's read tomorrow. Evelyn blinked, fighting tears. So it's true. I'm really the CEO. Henry smiled faintly. You've been CEO for months. You just didn't know it yet. The words sank in slowly, the weight both liberating and terrifying. Evelyn looked at her sleeping baby again. The legacy wasn't gone. It was waiting, but Henry's expression darkened. Evelyn, there's something else. Your father didn't just name you CEO. He left something behind, a trust file marked evidence. It contains documentation of Marcus's illegal transfers, offshore accounts, and Naomi Blake's role in corporate espionage. Evelyn's breath caught. Where is it? Inside Pierce Tower's vault, Henry said. Your father locked it under your access code, but until you're officially recognized, the system won't unlock. Evelyn clenched her fists, the fire inside her reigniting. Then tomorrow I walk into that will reading, not as a widow or a victim, but as Richard Pierce's daughter. Henry nodded approvingly. That's the spirit he raised you with. Evelyn's voice trembled between grief and resolve. He prepared me for this, didn't he? All those late nights, all those lessons. He was training me for now. Yes, Henry said softly. He knew the day would come when his empire would need a lioness, not a lamb. The baby stirred. Evelyn brushed his cheek gently, her tone now calm, controlled, and powerful. Then it's time the wolves learned whose daughter I am. Henry gathered his briefcase, pausing at the door. Be ready, Evelyn. Once you walk into that room tomorrow, there's no turning back. She looked up, eyes steady, voice firm. I don't plan to turn back. I plan to take it all. As Henry leaves, the camera pans to a black car idling outside. Naomi inside, watching through tinted glass, whispering into her phone. She knows. We move tonight. The hospital corridors were quiet when Charlotte Green walked in, her heels clicking softly against the linoleum floor. She wasn't just Evelyn's best friend, she was her lifeline. The one person who hadn't abandoned her when everyone else had turned away. Evelyn looked up from her chair as Charlotte entered, carrying a laptop and a small brown envelope. Relief flickered across her tired face. Charlotte, you came? Charlotte smiled faintly. You think I'd let Marcus win without a fight? Not a chance. She set the laptop on the table and knelt beside the crib, gazing at the sleeping baby. So this is the little warrior, huh? He's beautiful. Evelyn's eyes softened. His name's Richard. Charlotte nodded, emotion tightening her throat. Your father would have been proud. A heavy pause hung between them before Charlotte's tone changed, serious now. Evie, I've been digging. I think I found how Marcus and Naomi have been siphoning funds. Evelyn leaned forward. How? Charlotte turned the laptop toward her. The screen displayed a web of transactions, dozens of coded entries linking Pierce Industrial's accounts to shell corporations. They built a financial loop using Pierce's charity subsidiaries. Naomi handles the routing. Marcus signs off approvals using your father's old authorization codes. Evelyn's jaw clenched. My father warned me about his ambition, but I never thought he'd steal from his own family. Charlotte hesitated, then pulled out the brown envelope. I also found something else. Your father's private legal memo. He sent it to me 2 months before he passed. Said if anything ever happened to him, I'd know what to do. Evelyn blinked. Wait, he trusted you with that? Charlotte smiled faintly. Your dad was smarter than everyone realized. He knew Marcus was circling you. So he told me to learn the company's legal structure quietly. I've been working under Henry Wallace ever since. The weight of that revelation hit Evelyn like a quiet explosion. You've been protecting me all this time. Charlotte reached for her hand. Protecting his vision. You're not just the heir, Evie. You're the weapon he built to save Pierce Industries. For the first time in days, Evelyn smiled. Small, genuine, and dangerous. Then tomorrow we stop hiding. Charlotte closed the laptop and handed her a USB drive. This holds every trace of Naomi and Marcus's money trail. Once the will reading begins, plug it into the conference screen before Henry reads the final clause. It'll project everything. Every fraudulent signature, every transaction. Evelyn's pulse quickened. That will destroy them. Charlotte's tone sharpened. It'll bury them, but you have to survive until then. They've got eyes everywhere. Don't go anywhere alone tonight. Outside, thunder rolled. The city lights flickered through the window, casting lines of gold across Evelyn's face. She held the USB drive tightly, her heart pounding with purpose. They took my home, she whispered. Tomorrow I take back my name. Charlotte looked at her, eyes fierce. And when you do, Evie, make sure they never forget it. The scene cuts to Naomi on the phone in her penthouse, voice cold. She's planning something. Make sure that letter never reaches the will reading. The chandelier-lit ballroom of the Coleman mansion pulsed with laughter and jazz. Champagne flutes clinked, cameras flashed, and reporters gathered as Marcus raised a glass, the perfect image of triumph. His suit shimmered midnight black, his smile dazzling. To the world, he was the grieving son-in-law taking control of a crumbling empire. To new beginnings, he declared, voice ringing across the marble hall. Pierce Industries enters a stronger era. Mine. Applause erupted. Naomi stood beside him, wrapped in an emerald gown, her hand sliding across his arm possessively. She leaned close and whispered, "You've already won, Marcus. By tomorrow, everyone will forget she even existed." He smirked. "That's the plan." But for a split second, his gaze flicked to the far end of the room, to the empty doorway where Evelyn had once entered on his arm during company galas. Her laughter had filled this same space once. Tonight, silence lingered there like a ghost. Naomi noticed his distraction and tightened her grip. "Don't get sentimental. You built this moment. Enjoy it." Marcus forced a grin. "Right. No ghost tonight." The band swelled. Waiters circled with silver trays. Guests whispered about the upcoming will reading. Speculation thick as perfume. "She's too emotional to show up," one investor murmured. "Tragic, really," another added. "Losing her father and her husband's respect in the same month." Marcus overheard, smiling faintly. That was exactly how he wanted it. Evelyn humiliated, erased. He turned to Naomi. "By this time tomorrow, I'll have her father's empire and her inheritance. Pierce Industries will bear my name." Naomi's smile wavered slightly. "Are you sure the lawyer can't overturn it?" Marcus waved a dismissive hand. "Henry Wallace? The old man's loyal but predictable. I've already arranged to have him questioned by the board before the reading. If he tries anything—" He didn't finish. A security guard leaned in, whispering in his ear. Marcus's brow furrowed. "What?" The guard handed him a tablet. "These were sent anonymously to the company's main server tonight. Confidential documents labeled Pierce Legacy Audit. We can't trace the sender." Naomi's eyes darkened. "What's inside?" Marcus tapped the screen. The file refused to open. Encrypted. His pulse quickened. "Probably nothing," he muttered, slipping the device into his pocket. "We'll deal with it tomorrow." Naomi studied him carefully. "You're nervous." He forced another drink down, jaw tight. "I don't get nervous." But his reflection in the wineglass told another story. The faintest flicker of fear beneath arrogance. Across town, Evelyn sat in a borrowed car outside Pierce Tower, watching the lights from his party shimmer in the distance. She could almost hear his laughter from here. "Laugh while you can," she whispered. "Tomorrow you'll choke on it." She reached into her purse, touched the USB drive Charlotte had given her, then rested her hand over her baby's car seat. "We start at dawn." Naomi's phone buzzes with a message from an unknown number. She knows. She's coming. The smile on her face freezes. The morning before the will reading, Evelyn sat quietly in the car parked beside the pier, staring at the gray horizon where the ocean kissed the sky. She had barely slept. Her baby slept in the car seat beside her, the hum of the waves masking her racing thoughts. The letter her father had written lay open on her lap, but this time she didn't cry. She just stared at his handwriting. Bold, steady, certain, and remembered the day everything changed. It was late evening. Richard Pierce sat by the fire in his study, a tumbler of scotch in one hand, a chessboard between him and Evelyn. The flames cast soft gold across his face, but his eyes were sharp, studying her as much as the board. "Why did you take the bishop instead of protecting your queen?" he asked. Evelyn smiled faintly. "Because sometimes the queen has to risk herself to expose the real threat." He chuckled, leaning back. "You sound more like a strategist than a daughter." "I learned from you." His smile faded slowly. "Then you know every strategy is a test, Evie. One day the people around you will force you to choose between comfort and conviction. That's when I'll know if you're ready." Evelyn looked confused. "Ready for what?" He moved his next piece, a clean, decisive checkmate. "To lead." She laughed softly, shaking her head. "Dad, you've got a whole boardroom of trained executives. I'm just—" "You're mine," he interrupted gently. "And that means you're the only one I trust to protect what we built when I'm gone." She stared at him, heart tightening. "You're talking like—" But he raised a hand. "Listen carefully, Evelyn. Pierce Industries is more than numbers. It's people, families who depend on us. The wolves are waiting. I've been watching them. Your uncle Marcus, even Naomi. She's not who she pretends to be. I tested them all." Her breath caught. "Tested?" He nodded slowly. "I leaked a fake rumor last year that I was transferring 40% of my shares to a new trust. Within days, Marcus came to me pretending to help manage it. Naomi sent documents to competitors, Your uncle tried to rewrite my will. Only one person came to my office asking how to protect the company, not steal it. Evelyn's eyes welled. Who? He smiled softly, proud. You. Tears spilled down her cheeks as he placed his hand over hers. That was your test, Evie. You passed without even knowing it. Evelyn blinked, tears blurring the sunrise. Her father's voice echoed in her mind. When they think you're powerless, that's when you strike. She lifted her head, her expression steady now. Calm, resolute. You tested me, Dad. Now I'll finish the lesson. She turned the key in the ignition. The car engine roared to life. Behind her, the ocean wind carried his words like a promise. You are my legacy, not my victim. Evelyn looked into the rearview mirror. Her baby reflected beside her. Time to make them remember whose empire this is. A black SUV appears behind her in the mirror, following closely as she drives toward the city. The shadow of danger has begun. The boardroom of Pierce Industries was a cathedral of glass and steel, 30 floors above the city, where power looked down on everything beneath it. The long mahogany table gleamed under the soft light, surrounded by sharp suits, cameras, and whispers. Marcus stood at the head of the room, radiant with arrogance. Naomi beside him in a white dress meant to symbolize innocence. Around them sat board members, lawyers, and family. To the press waiting in the corridor, this was merely a formality, a billionaire's last will. To Evelyn walking toward those doors with her father's letter in her purse and her baby in her arms, it was war. As the elevator opened, conversations faltered, heads turned, gasps followed. She entered in silence, graceful, calm, but every step echoed like thunder. Her tailored black dress hugged her figure, her hair swept back, her expression unreadable. Naomi's painted smile froze. Marcus's hand tightened around his glass. Evelyn, he said with mock surprise, you look better than expected. I was told you were too fragile to attend. She met his gaze evenly. You shouldn't believe everything you hear. Henry Wallace rose immediately, his voice steady. Ladies and gentlemen, we're gathered to execute the final testament of the late Richard Pierce. He gestured toward Evelyn. His daughter, Mrs. Evelyn Pierce Coleman, will of course be present as the primary beneficiary. Murmurs rippled through the room. Marcus forced a laugh. Primary beneficiary? That can't be right, Henry. I handled the paperwork. Henry's expression hardened. You handled nothing, Mr. Coleman. The documents you saw were decoys. He opened a folder and pulled out a sealed directive, gold-stamped with Richard's signature. This was signed 6 months before his death. Effective immediately, the position of Chief Executive Officer of Pierce Industries is to be transferred to Evelyn Pierce Coleman. The room erupted. Cameras flashed. Gasps sliced the air. Evelyn didn't move. She simply looked at Marcus, his face drained of color. What kind of joke is this? He shouted. Henry continued calmly. There's more. He opened a second folder. The late Mr. Pierce also transferred full personal and marital assets, including this estate, all company shares and properties, to his daughter. Marcus Coleman and Naomi Blake are hereby stripped of all legal claim pending investigation for corporate misconduct. Naomi staggered back, face pale. Investigation? Henry nodded. Yes, Mr. Pierce left evidence. Evelyn stepped forward, her voice steady but trembling with controlled fury. You laughed when you threw me out, Marcus. You said I was nothing without him. But my father prepared for people like you long before you came along. She pulled the USB drive from her purse and handed it to Henry. Show them. He plugged it into the projector. The screen came alive. Pages of financial transfers, forged signatures, offshore accounts, all bearing Marcus and Naomi's names. The room fell deathly silent. Marcus whispered, voice breaking, No, this can't be. Evelyn took a step closer. You were so busy stealing my father's empire, you never realized you were building the evidence that would destroy you. Henry's voice cut through. Security will escort Mr. Coleman and Ms. Blake for questioning. As guards approached, Marcus turned desperately to Evelyn. Evie, please, you can't. But she only smiled. Soft, sorrowful, final. You chose this the night you threw me out. Cameras flash wildly as Marcus is led away shouting her name, while Evelyn turns calmly toward the window. The city reflecting in her eyes, the storm finally breaking. The boardroom was still buzzing long after Marcus and Naomi were escorted out. Some whispered in disbelief, others in awe. Evelyn stood at the far end of the room, one hand resting on the table, the other on the gold ring her father once wore. The images on the projector, the bank transfers, the secret communications, the offshore accounts, still glowed faintly on the screen. They weren't just numbers. They were proof of her father's foresight and her own rebirth. Henry Wallace quietly disconnected the USB drive and turned to her. "You handled that with grace, Evelyn. Your father would have been proud." Evelyn exhaled, eyes wet but steady. "He built the weapon. I just pulled the trigger." She sank into one of the chairs as the chaos outside the glass walls slowly died down. Through the haze of adrenaline, her mind drifted back to the months before her father's death, to the secret he'd buried within the company's vault. 8 months earlier, the lights in Richard Pierce's study were low. Charlotte sat across from him, tapping on her laptop while he dictated a memo. "Make sure the system logs every transfer Marcus makes," Richard said. "I want the server to mirror itself every 12 hours. Encrypted, hidden in the environmental projects folder." Charlotte looked up, surprised. "That's not a business directory, sir." "That's the point," he said with a faint smirk. "Greed never looks where goodness hides." She typed quickly. "And the trigger file?" He nodded. "It will activate when Evelyn's name is entered as CEO in the database. Until then, no one will even know it exists." He paused, looking at her with quiet trust. "Charlotte, if anything happens to me before I finish this, promise me you'll help my daughter find it." Charlotte hesitated, eyes soft. "She's strong. She won't need me." Richard's expression gentled. "Even lions need someone to remind them they can roar." Back to present, Evelyn's eyes flickered open from the memory. Charlotte entered the room quietly, laptop under her arm, a knowing smile on her face. "It worked," Charlotte said softly. "The moment Henry plugged in your USB, the company's servers released every file your father buried. The board already voted unanimously to keep you as CEO." Evelyn stood slowly, looking out at the skyline. The empire her father had built, the legacy she now held. "He never stopped protecting me," she whispered. Charlotte stepped beside her. "He didn't just protect you, Evie. He taught you to fight differently. Not through rage, through truth." Evelyn nodded, her reflection in the glass looking both fierce and fragile. "Then truth is what I'll lead with." Henry entered again, holding a folder. "The media's already outside. They're calling it the will that shook Pierce Tower. What should I tell them?" Evelyn turned, calm and powerful. "Tell them the truth. The Pierce legacy lives on, and its guardian wears heels." They shared a quiet smile before Henry exited. Charlotte's phone buzzed. She frowned. "It's Naomi's number. Unknown location." Evelyn's jaw tightened. "Let it ring." Charlotte sets the phone down as it buzzes again. This time a text lights up the screen. "It's not over." The camera pans to a police car outside carrying Marcus, his cold eyes staring back through the window. The next morning, the world woke to chaos. News alert. Pierce Industries scandal. CEO's husband arrested for fraud and corporate sabotage. Cameras swarmed the entrance of Pierce Tower. Reporters shouted questions. Flashes sliced through the air. Inside, the atmosphere was electric, the kind of silence that trembles before breaking. Evelyn stepped off the elevator in a white power suit, calm as sunrise. Security escorted her down the marble hallway, while voices echoed from the boardroom ahead. Raised, desperate voices. Marcus Coleman was back, but not as a husband, as a man cornered. His hair was unkempt, his tie loose, his eyes wild. Naomi sat beside him, wrists trembling, face pale beneath heavy makeup. Across the table, lawyers and board members reviewed printed evidence, files he once thought buried. He slammed his fist on the table. "This is a setup. Evelyn forged this. She's manipulating you." Henry Wallace didn't flinch. "Every signature, every timestamp, every document has been verified by the company's encrypted backup system, installed by your late father-in-law himself." You can't fake the truth, Mr. Coleman. Naomi's voice cracked. Marcus, stop! He turned on her sharply. You did this. You're the one who told me his code still worked. Naomi's lips quivered. You said you had everything under control. Evelyn entered then, the room falling silent at once. Her heels clicked slowly against the marble. Deliberate, echoing authority. Marcus froze. Evelyn! She met his eyes, her tone like ice over fire. You remember the night you threw me out? You said I was nothing without my father? He swallowed, desperate. I was angry, hurt. No, she interrupted, voice calm but lethal. You were greedy. She stopped at the head of the table, the place her father once sat. You spent years trying to dismantle the Pierce name, but my father taught me something you never understood. Marcus leaned forward, voice trembling. Please, Evelyn, don't do this. She looked down at him, eyes softening just slightly. He taught me mercy has to be earned. Naomi suddenly stood, voice breaking. I'll testify against him. I'll tell everything. Just don't let them arrest me. Evelyn turned to her slowly. You betrayed me when I was carrying a child. You watched him throw me out and smiled. Her tone sharpened. Now you can explain your smile to the investigators. Naomi's knees buckled as two officers entered and took her away. Marcus's breathing grew frantic. Evelyn, please. You loved me once. Evelyn stepped closer until they stood inches apart. The world seemed to fall away. Cameras outside the glass walls captured every word. I did, she whispered. And that's what makes this justice, not revenge. Two guards took Marcus by the arms. He didn't fight. His eyes filled with the same disbelief he once laughed with. As he was led out, Evelyn called softly, Marcus? He turned. She smiled faintly. You laughed when you threw me out. Now laugh when the gates close. He stared at her, broken, as the elevator doors shut with a quiet final ding. The boardroom remained silent until Henry said softly, It's done. Evelyn exhaled, tears finally slipping free. Not of pain, but release. No, she whispered, it's just beginning. Outside, the media erupts as Marcus is shoved into a police car, while Evelyn steps out before flashing cameras, her baby's tiny hand visible in her arms. The crowd hushes, realizing the empire has a new ruler. Outside Pierce Tower, a sea of flashing cameras and murmuring reporters stretched down the avenue. The chaos of the morning had transformed into a hum of anticipation, the rise of a story no one saw coming. Evelyn Pierce Coleman, the woman her husband discarded, is now the new CEO of Pierce Industries. One anchor's voice echoed through the crowd. Moments ago, her husband was taken into custody for fraud, theft, and corporate conspiracy. Inside the building's atrium, Evelyn stood before a wall of glass that overlooked the skyline, her father's empire glinting in the sunlight. Her posture was composed, but her heart raced. Henry stood to her right, Charlotte to her left, and little Richard asleep in her arms, wrapped in a white blanket. Henry leaned in quietly. The world's waiting, Evelyn. She nodded, stepping forward as the press microphones extended toward her like an ocean of judgment. For a moment she looked down, remembering the woman who had once been thrown into the dirt, pregnant and broken. Then she lifted her head. Her voice was soft at first, but each word carried weight. A few days ago, I stood outside my own home with nothing but a suitcase and my unborn child. I thought I'd lost everything. My father, my family, my future. Cameras flashed. Silence fell. But I learned something my father always believed, that power isn't inherited, it's proven, and strength isn't given, it's born the moment you decide to stand back up. The crowd stirred. She glanced briefly at Henry, then at the glass ceiling above her, as though speaking to the man who built it. My father, Richard Pierce, believed in building legacies, not empires. He taught me that truth always finds its way through darkness. And today, Pierce Industries begins a new chapter, one built on that truth. Applause broke through, first softly, then rising. Evelyn's tone steadied, firm, decisive. To the employees of Pierce Industries, your jobs are safe. To our investors, your trust will be restored. And to the women watching this who've ever been told they're nothing without someone else, she paused, her eyes glistening. You are enough. More than enough. The atrium erupted in applause. Cameras zoomed in as she gently adjusted the baby in her arms. Henry whispered, "Perfect." Every word. But Evelyn wasn't done. She lifted her hand, revealing her father's gold ring now on her finger. This company was built with integrity, and that's how it will continue. Under my leadership, as Richard Pierce's daughter and Pierce Industries' rightful CEO. The applause thundered. Even the reporters dropped their microphones, moved beyond words. Charlotte blinked back tears. He'd be proud, Evie. Evelyn looked out at the flashing lights, her reflection merging with the city's skyline beyond the glass. He already is. As the applause continues, Evelyn's phone vibrates. A message lights up from an unknown number. We need to talk. It's about your father's last project. The smile fades from her lips, setting up the final reflection. The sun hung low over the city skyline, painting Pierce Tower in hues of gold and rose. The chaos had faded. The crowds were gone. Inside her new office, her father's old one, Evelyn stood before the panoramic glass window, gazing down at the world that had once seemed unreachable. The city buzzed quietly below, unaware that this was the first sunset in years that felt peaceful to her. The desk still held traces of her father, a half-finished pen, a paperweight engraved with his initials, and an old photograph of the two of them smiling during her college graduation. She picked it up, running her thumb over his face. You kept your promise, Dad, she whispered. You said I'd know who I am when I was tested. The door opened behind her softly. Charlotte entered, holding a small silver mirror from her father's belongings. They found this in the vault, she said. It's yours. Evelyn turned it over in her hands. The back was engraved. Legacy isn't about what you leave behind. It's about who you leave standing. A quiet smile tugged at her lips. He always knew how to say things that stayed. Charlotte lingered by the door. Marcus's sentencing will be swift. Naomi already agreed to testify. The world's on your side now, Evie. Evelyn nodded but didn't look away from the skyline. The world never mattered. I just needed to prove to myself that he didn't raise a coward. Charlotte placed a hand on her shoulder. You did more than prove it. You embodied it. Evelyn turned, eyes warm but steady. I couldn't have done it without you. You were his hidden strength long before you were mine. They embraced, not as allies, but as survivors who had turned pain into power. When Charlotte left, Evelyn crossed the room and placed the mirror on the desk, beside her father's ring. The office was silent again, but the silence didn't hurt anymore. Her baby's cry echoed softly from the bassinet near the couch. She walked over, lifting him gently into her arms. His tiny fingers curled around hers, his breathing calm and pure. You'll never know the world the way I did, she whispered, kissing his forehead. You'll grow up knowing that your mother stood her ground. Outside, the lights of the city flickered, like stars waking up one by one. Through the glass, she caught sight of the street below. A black car rolled to a slow stop outside the tower gates. Inside, Marcus sat handcuffed, head bowed, face hollow. For the first time, he wasn't shouting or smirking. He was quiet, broken, staring up at the tower that once symbolized his ambition. Evelyn's reflection aligned with his image in the glass. Their eyes met through distance and fate. He mouthed, I'm sorry. Evelyn didn't move. Her gaze held steady, calm, and resolute. Then she whispered, not for him, but for herself. I forgive you, but I'll never forget. The car drove away slowly, swallowed by the evening traffic. Evelyn turned back toward the window. The skyline shimmered around her. The empire now hers, but her heart finally free. She smiled faintly, whispering the final words her father once told her. Words now her truth. You are my legacy, not my victim. Golden sunlight reflects off the tower glass as Evelyn walks toward her desk, holding her baby, a queen ascending her throne. The camera pans out slowly, fading into light.